o'clock. I'm Nana Okoye. We have some breaking news here on GB News. Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, will announce his resignation this evening amid allegations of bias at the corporation. It is understood in a statement, Tim Davie says there have been some mistakes made, and as Director General, I have to take ultimate responsibility. Now, of course, the move comes following a torrid week for Britain's national broadcaster after it was accused of airing a doctored clip of a speech by President Trump and failing in its coverage on Gaza and trans issues. Also going, Deborah Turness. Now, she's the broadcaster's CEO of News. She has resigned. Now, this is a breaking story. We'll bring you all of that as and when it happens, and hopefully we'll get the actual resignation speech from Tim Davie as he does so, as we're expecting to hear that very shortly. Now, I can tell you now, I met Tim Davie a little while ago at a spectator party, and I told him, I'm Nana Okoye from GB News. I work for the BBC. I used to work for you at the BBC. And he said, you make your bed. So joining me now, Josh Howie, who is with me. So this is a big story. The BBC have failed on matters of national and international importance, like getting the bomb wrong about the backfiring bomb that was actually fired by Hamas, like the documentary that they did using a Hamas operative.
Anna, if we use examples, we would literally be here all night. We are talking...
And it's a shame. It's so sad.
Hundreds of pages of misinformation and some outright lies, and some of them, most damning of all, lies they actually knew to be lies. So I used to work at the BBC as well. I have always believed in the BBC ideals, but the fact is they've betrayed it. They've been betraying it now for at least the last 10 years or so, and it's come to this point simply because of hubris, because of arrogance, to believe that they were above criticism. And they have been pointed out on so many issues, on, as you say, on the trans issues, on issues to do with Gaza and Israel. Look, we've got Free Speech Nation a bit. We've got historians are coming in. They went to the BBC in 2022 and they said, look, you've misled the public on a bunch of these historical issues that are being taught to our children. And the BBC said, no, you're just pick and choosing, you're just cherry-picking here. These are from some of the leading historians in the world, and the BBC would not listen. So finally now we have accountability. Is it going to change anything? Is it going to change the culture? Frankly, I don't believe so. Certainly not within BBC News. That is an ideologically captured organisation that we are forced to pay for on pain of going to jail. And I don't see how possibly the news aspect of it certainly can be saved.
Well, there are many broadcasters on there, and some of them are very good. I mean, let's take Maxine Croxall. She raised her eye at the notion that people who have, pregnant people, is actually a bit of an insult to women. However, 20 people complained. 20 people. You've got half the population who would have... I was offended by being called a pregnant person. It felt like an obliteration of the word woman, yet the complaint was upheld and Maxine's in trouble.
But they're going to be...
Absurd.
People are going to be saying, oh, this is like, you know, right-wing conspiracy. You've seen it online, you've seen it in the press. This is all, like, the right-wing people. They're desperate to get the BBC. You know what? I'm not desperate to get the BBC. As you say, there are many good journalists and great journalists working there. But what I want is a news service, if I'm forced to pay for it, that's just fair, that doesn't lie and doesn't lie by omission. And unfortunately, that is not what we have.
Well, I mean, let's go live now. Stay right there, Josh. Let's go live to Ben Leo. He's there in Washington, D.C. We spoke to him a little earlier. His show is on at midnight, but I've got to say, so there's been action, Ben, here in the UK, as you've probably heard, as you well know. Tim Davie has resigned alongside Deborah Turness. Of course, they've both gone.
Yes, wow, what a 24 hours, well, 48 hours rather. You know, it was only on Friday that the White House administration here, Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, released that damning statement towards the BBC, calling them a far-left, a left propaganda outlet. And now here we are on Sunday with the resignation of not just Tim Davie, Nana and viewers, but also Deborah Turness, who is the CEO of BBC News. Davie, in his statement, which has just been released now on the BBC, says, in these increasingly polarised times, the BBC is of unique value and speaks to the very best of us. It helps make the UK a special place. Overall, it's delivering well, but it's time now, after 20 years at the BBC, to resign and to take ultimate responsibility for what's happened here. I think this is the right decision, Nana, solely because Tim Davie and the BBC chairman Samir Shah knew about this panorama situation with the Trump video 6 months ago, way back in April. It was brought up as a serious issue, and they'd left it until now, until the White House finally said something. It was that exclusive line to the Telegraph newspaper on Friday, which really proved the nail in the coffin for Tim Davie and Deborah Turness, the BBC News CEO. And I just wonder, Nana, we're going to try and get this confirmed now in Washington, D.C. We're working hard to get this confirmed, but I wonder, did the White House say to the BBC, look, something needs to happen here, somebody needs to fall on their sword because we're not just going to let this slide? Rob Crilly, who is the Daily Telegraph journalist here in Washington, D.C., the Washington correspondent, he told me on the Late Show Live on, I think it was Friday evening, that the BBC's one of their Washington correspondents, they have many here actually because they're so flush with licence fee money, they said Gary O'Donoghue, who's one of the main Washington correspondents, was seen in the White House on Friday, on the day Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, gave that damning statement. I wonder if he was dragged in by the White House for a dressing down, maybe by Caroline Levitt, maybe by President Trump himself. And was it on that occasion that they said to Gary O'Donoghue, the Beebs correspondent, something needs to be done? It's all happened in a whirlwind 48 hours, but we'll try and get that confirmed and some more information for you ahead of the Late Show Live tonight at midnight here in the United States.
All right, yeah, Ben Leo, wow. So thank you very much for that. Of course, yes, Ben will hopefully be joining us throughout the hour and his show at midnight. So, Josh Howie, the BBC have been criticised a lot about their coverage in terms of Gaza. And, of course, there was that documentary which they featured a Hamas operative. He was the son of a Hamas operative who was like the narrator. But they failed to tell us about this. All of this has been an embarrassment on the world stage.
Absolutely. I mean, even you have Ben there, but yeah, talking about the White House press secretary, she called out the BBC from the podium, read out a bunch of examples. That I think the example she was talking about was saying they were essentially taking Hamas, a terrorist organisation of Islamists, who were just kind of saying stuff, and the BBC were just repurposing it as facts. So they were sort of like, oh, we've just found 47 people dead, and then it was like constantly renewed until it turned out that they actually couldn't find any people who'd been killed. It's humiliating for the BBC, and it's humiliating for the country, frankly.
And what I have found, because I always flick through all the news channels to see what's going on, and when we were all talking about the economy and the situation we have with the dinghies, the boats, they kept talking about Gaza, and I'm thinking, look, I have sympathy for the people in Gaza, but I want you to focus on what's going on at home. They seem to make the news agenda about other things. We're not interested.
More people were killed in the last week in Sudan than in the entirety of the Gaza-Israel war. Just think about that. How many times has the BBC covered what's happened in Sudan over the last 2 years compared to just the incessant deluge of articles and reports that are coming out from Gaza? That's not to say it's not important, but the fact it's dominated the news like so totally and all foreign affairs. Other things are happening in the world, and when you see what's the evil that's happening in Sudan that has essentially been ignored during this time, that's a failure by the BBC and other news organisations of a mission.
All right, well, let's speak to Tom Bauer. Tom Bauer, who joins us now. Of course, he wrote that incredible book, Revenge. Tom Bauer, now, you've been critical of the BBC. What are your thoughts on what has just happened?
Well, I'm delighted because I think Tim Davie was a catastrophe from the moment he was appointed. He was a Pepsi-Cola salesman. He had absolutely no interest and no experience in journalism, let alone making programmes. He'd never made a programme in his life. He was completely adrift and he was just the wrong person for the job. And I think what's happened now is really the right time to actually completely gut the BBC of all those people who have their own agendas which are not in the agenda of truth and the news. And as your correspondent rightly said from Washington, Tim Davie knew for 6 months that Trump documentary was false, and he did nothing. He did nothing because he did the same with the Martin Bashir report on Diana and many other things. He pushed it into the long grass, hoping it would be forgotten. Because in the end, I don't think Tim Davie understood what truth means in journalism, because he has no experience of it. As for Deborah Turness, it was her job to make sure that the BBC was honest and truthful, and repeatedly she failed. She failed throughout the whole Gaza war. She failed on transgender. She failed on so many issues. It has been painful to watch and listen to BBC output, and I talk as somebody who worked for 26 years there, 10 years on Panorama. It's been painful to watch the BBC's standards crash under Tim Davie and under Deborah Turness. So hopefully now they can clean the stables and begin appointing people who know the difference between activism and agendas and the truth and proper reporting. So I've got hope now for tonight. I think it's a wonderful day that Tim Davie has been forced out. And be no doubt about it, he has been forced out. My impression was, talking to people at the BBC and outside the BBC on Friday, that they felt they could get away with just an apology. I think the pressure on Shah, who himself is just as gullible and responsible for what happened on the Trump program, because he was told by Prescott last May the truth, what had happened, how the BBC had distorted the Trump speech, and he also remained silent because he was fearful of change. He did not want change. He did not want to kick Tim Davie out because he felt it would disrupt the negotiations for the renewal of the BBC Charter. But he's been forced to act. So it's a great day for British broadcasting, a great day for the British journalism, and a good day for Britain that finally the BBC has been forced to get rid of these two people who have been literally poisoning the well, rotten leaders, and now hopefully we can rebuild the BBC as it should be, a broadcaster of impeccable world reputation.
But do you think those two people are enough? Because I agree with you, Samir Shah, he knew about it. And also the people who actually, I think it was October Films who put that together. Who edited it? Who edited it?
Well,
those people, I mean, they probably don't have power over those people in another company, but I would like to hear those people being held to account as well.
Well, I agree with you. Of course, October Films bears the primary responsibility because they distorted the film, just like the Hamas film was again outside. But it's down to the BBC commissioning editor to actually supervise what happened. So the BBC executive had to make sure about the truth. No, I think there are a lot of people who've got to go within the BBC. They've got to clear out all the people who believe that their truth is the truth, where in fact is all prejudiced lies. The number of times I've listened to The World at One with Sarah Montague, the number of times I've listened to the Day programme, they're constantly criticising in the most vituperative way Israelis and giving doctors from Gaza, the UN and all their spokesmen the most outrageous license to tell untruths. And that's got to end. The Today programme has got to be reformed. World at One has got to be reformed. The news has got to be reformed. We need, finally, to get some people in the BBC who know about telling the truth in an impartial way. And that is why today is a great day for all those who believe that what has gone on in the last few years has been an appalling travesty for our national broadcaster.
Yeah, it's very sad because it's gone global simply because of the whole Donald Trump business as well. Thank you very much, Tom Bauer. Really good to talk to you. Thank you for your thoughts. Much appreciated.